All right. Saxophonist Steve Wilson is here to talk about highlights from his Blue Note Records days, working with the Charles Mingus Big Band and his post as musical director at City College of New York. I'm Brian Zimmerman. This is Jazziz Last Call. All right. And as always, before we get started, just wanted to let you know about an ECM record that I think you'll really dig. This one is the latest from accordionist Jean-Louis Martinier and guitarist Kevin Siddiqui. It's a really beautiful duo album. It kind of has that left bank Paris Rive Gauche feel. If you want to be out on the patio drinking a glass of red wine, this is absolutely the album you should be sipping to. So to learn more about it and all the other great ECM albums releases, check out ecmrecords.com. Also wanted to let you know about our latest print issue. This would be our summer 2020 issue on newsstands now and in subscribers' mailboxes and coffee tables now. This one is all about fusion. As you can see, the age of fusion. We talked to Chick Corea for the cover story. We also talked to some young fusion players, give you an essential fusion discography. It's a really great issue. Fortunately, all of the content from this print issue is available as web articles on our website. You will need a digital subscription to read them, though. And fortunately, for Jazz's Last Call viewers, we are offering a special subscription rate. For just 99 cents per month for 3 months, you can unlock unlimited digital access to all the web articles from this issue and all of our previous issues. Plus, we'll enroll you to receive a complimentary print issue come fall. Our next issue is the fall 2020 issue. It's coming out in September, and it's all about the art of the album, listening to albums, producing albums, album cover art, collecting albums. It's a really cool issue. And like I say, you enroll now, you subscribe now, you get all the content from this one online, plus a complimentary print issue come September. All right, my guest today, as I mentioned, is Steve Wilson, the consummate woodwind player and a phenomenal band leader in his own right. He has been featured on more than 100 recordings by the likes of Chick Corea, George Duke, Michael Brecker, Dave Holland, Diane Reeves, and more. He was also a member of the Charles Mingus Big Band and not one, but two Blue Note All-Star groups. He's also a Yamaha artist, and he is the director of jazz studies at the City College of New York. More important, he's here to talk to us about all of that. So please welcome to the Last Call, Steve Wilson.
Hey there, Brian.
Hey, Steve.
All right. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good to see you too. I know the world is a crazy place upside down right now, but how are you doing? How are you holding up?
Hey, man, I'm hanging in here, all things considered. You know, it's day to day. Of course, we are evolving out of this thing slowly but surely. But just trying to plan for next year. I mean, because this year has pretty much been wiped out with performances and so just trying to look forward, and trying to catch up on my tech stuff and preparing for school for the fall. So yeah, it's enough to keep me busy.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. As our viewers know, the one thing we like to do at the beginning of every show is give a toast. This is the last call, after all, to something, some place, some idea, someone. So, Steve, who, what, where, when, why are we honoring with this glass?
Well, I have to say the great Jimmy Cobb, who we recently lost. Of course, we lost a lot of great musicians recently, but I had the great honor and fortune to play with Jimmy Cobb a couple of times, and I'll never forget it, man. He just had a very unique sound, a very unique feel, and he was just a great gentleman, a beautiful soul. So I will raise a toast to Jimmy Cobb.
Absolutely. Mr. Jimmy Cobb. Cheers to that, was the last surviving member of the iconic, Kind of Blue ensemble. So, that was really a loss for the jazz community. And you played with him in which group?
Well, there was an all-star group put together, I guess it was about 10 years ago. By Jazz and Lincoln Center, and with myself, Eddie Henderson, who else was on that? Dave Kokoski, I think it was Eddie Howard, and we toured the West Coast for I think a couple of weeks, and it was a fantastic experience. Beautiful.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, you played with a lot of major musicians, Steve, and right now, I mean, you're in New York. You've been a New York guy for a while, but it all started for you in Virginia, yes?
That's right. Yeah,
very cool.
Virginia. That's
and
right.
Before you made that leap to the New York jazz scene, if I'm not mistaken, you were playing with groups like the Four Tops, right? and
Well,
sophisticated ladies.
yeah, well, I was, a local musician at the time in
Yeah,
Richmond, Virginia, and then shows would come through, and I would get hired as one of the locals. Yeah.
nice playing for that. Was that the kind of music you were listening to as a kid too, or a little bit of everything?
I listened to everything, man. I mean, when I growing up in the 60s and 70s, my father had a very small but eclectic record collection. So everything from Motown to James Brown to Johnny Mathis to Miles Davis to Miriam Makeba. I mean, it was everything in there. So when those shows started to come through, I was lucky enough to get calls sometimes to do the pit bands, and it was a
Nice.
lot of fun. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
part of the craft. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I imagine. And there's something important too about kind of early in those formative years, playing in the section,
Yes.
with the band.
Yes.
You learn, right? You learn, I imagine, some valuable skills in terms of listening,
Oh,
blending, and yeah.
most definitely. Yeah. Those things really prepared me for everything that I would do in New York and beyond,
Hmm.
having those experiences and playing with older musicians who really understood their craft and showed you how to apply the craft and how to get prepared. And it was a wonderful experience.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And I know you also put out an album in the early 2000s called Soulful Song.
Hmm.
That was kind of a tribute to, as you called it, Black radio. And that was a term
Yes.
for it back in the day.
That's right.
Did you have a specific radio station in mind, from the
Yeah,
beginning?
actually, well, the one I grew up with, it was based in Norfolk, Virginia. It was
Okay.
WRAP, and uh, uh, Daddy Jack Holmes was the great one of the great personalities. Of course, Black radio, as all radio back then, was more localized. So you had
Mhm.
the local DJs, and particularly in Black radio, which was all over the country. But this is before everything got corporatized.
Right.
And so they would give you not just the music, but they would inform you as to what was going on in the community and the world at large. So it was more than about the music, man. You got informed about the whole thing. And
Yeah.
then of course you heard not just one kind of music. Sundays it was gospel, and then at nighttime there was jazz all on the same station. So you could get a lot of information from those stations back then. It wasn't so compartmentalized.
Right. And we're missing that to a certain extent, because of the corporatization of radio, especially pop radio. There are still definitely some amazing public radio stations doing their thing, college radio
Right,
stations doing their thing.
right,
But you kind
right.
of lose that. And especially now with all these algorithms of, a robot figuring out what you should
That's right.
listen to next.
Yeah,
It's,
that's
it's,
right.
it's important to have, like you said, these DJs back then who were giving kind of a shape to the scene. And that's why you talk about, certain scenes had certain styles, like Philly
Mm-hmm.
was big into the organ
Mm-hmm.
jazz stuff. And it's
Yep.
because they had these local media people in the personality kind of curating a scene, which
That's
was,
right. Yeah, yeah, and it was a real galvanizing force in the
yeah,
community, man.
yeah,
So you went from. I remember as a kid, I would visit D.C., Detroit with my family, and they all had their local, like you said, their local sounds. The
yeah.
local guys. It was great. It's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a great record, by the way, Soulful Song. So I encourage everybody watching, go check out that record. Go buy that record. Now's the time to buy the physical record.
Thank you.
Support these artists for sure.
Thanks.
And so making the leap from Virginia to New York, was it the out of the Blue Note All-Star band that kind of brought you there?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, I joined the band in '86,
Okay.
and I had met Kenny Garrett, who was the original altos in the band. But I had met Kenny a few years before when he was playing lead alto in the Broadway show Sophisticated Ladies.
Hmm.
And when they toured through Virginia, I got called to play in the pit, and we hung out for about a week. And when he left the band to go with Art Blakey, then subsequently with Miles, he called and asked if I would be interested in subbing in the band. And so I subbed a couple of gigs and got hired, and then moved to New York a year later. So that's how it all
Wow.
got started.
That's
in
an
New York.
important legacy, the Blue Note All-Star group, And I
Yeah.
imagine you grew up steeped in Blue Note like a lot of us jazz musicians do.
Yep.
Is there a particular Blue Note album that is just like imprinted on your brain more than any other?
Yeah. Well, I said the first Blue Note record that I really got hip to was Wailing with Lou Donaldson.
Yeah, okay.
And because when I was around 14 or 15, I had a cousin who lived in New York who was an alto player, and he would come to visit our family in the summers, and he brought that LP to me one summer, and I kept that LP and started to, learn some stuff from Lou and transcribing. So that was really the first Blue Note LP that I really got into.
Right on, yeah, and Boogaloo by Lou is
Alligator
one of my
Boogaloo, yeah,
favorites of all time too. And
yeah, yeah.
it's crazy that we're based in South Florida here near Miami.
Hmm.
But I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in New York, and of course, as I come to rest here in Fort Lauderdale, turns out Lou is down here as well.
Right, yeah,
He's a
yeah,
regular
right,
guy down
yeah,
here, which has
yeah,
been very cool. Yeah,
yeah,
and so this for the Blue Note period, this is pre Don Was. Right. I mean, this
yes,
would
yeah.
have put you. What year was this that you first made that Out of the Blue group?
86, 87, because the label had just relaunched, I think, in
Right.
85.
Right.
And this was Bruce Lumvo, and Michael
Yeah.
Kimura. And it was a big deal, man, because, and also the Japanese got involved. So Toshiba EMI was the distributor of Blue Note in Japan. And of course, now, they had all of the out of print stuff that we couldn't get here in Japan. So when we
Yeah.
started going to when I started traveling to Japan and going to the Mount Fuji Jazz Festival in the late 80s, you could find all of those out of print Blue Note records in Japan. So that was a kind of I guess you could say another perk of being on the label. Yeah,
for sure. And who was in that group with you?
Yeah, well, when I joined the band, Ralph Peterson was on drums.
Okay.
Michael Mossman was on trumpet. Ralph Bowen on tenor. Harry Pickens was in it, but then he left right after I joined the band on piano. And then Renee Rosnes joined the band, and Kenny Davis had just joined the band after Bob Hurst left. And then about a year after I joined the band, Billy Drummond, who of course we're best friends from Virginia, he moved to New York and then joined the band when Ralph left.
Okay. Yeah. So this would have been 1980s. These were the young musicians that Blue Note was really shining a spotlight on and,
Right.
given a platform to. It's a beautiful thing. And they're continuing to do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ambrose has really, found a voice on Blue Note.
Right.
Ambrose Musari,
Right.
Derek Hodge.
Yeah.
It's been really cool. So,
Yeah.
you were also a longtime member of the Charles Mingus Big Band.
Yeah, I played with the band for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Of course, this was in the early 90s, mid 90s. And of course, at that time, Sue Mingus, she had, oh my God, I think she had a roster of like 100 musicians. and she could actually have simultaneously the regular big band playing at what was then the Fez in New York. That was on Lafayette and West 3rd Street. But she could have two big bands on the road at the same time. So she could really have three bands operating simultaneously. But she also had other ensembles in Mingus's name. I think there was a guitar ensemble.
Yes, that's right.
There was a Mingus orchestra. So it was quite an enterprise that she had put together.
It absolutely was. And does that group still perform at, where is it, Jazz Standard?
Jazz Standard, yeah.
With what's going on now.
Right.
But,
on hiatus, yeah.
Up until very recently, had a weekly gig at Jazz Standard. I mean, I imagine you grew up listening to Mingus. Can you kind of put a finger on why that music has endured, for so long? Why that Mingus Big Band continues to be so in demand, so popular?
Well, you know what? I think that Mingus's music is always timely. Yeah. It's always about the moment. And of course, with Mingus was a very courageous artist because he put it all out there. So what we sometimes will refer to as protest music, he was writing songs about civil rights, of course, before many other artists were. He kind of broke new ground in that. So from that perspective, he's always been timely in subject matter. But I think his music represents that balance between the fine craft of composing and arranging, which he was one of the great composers and arrangers of all time, but also that element of the rawness of the human experience and human emotion, and that speaks to people. I remember when I played with the band, that was also a weekly gig every Monday, and it was packed. It was sold out every Monday for 2 sets, sold out, and was mostly young people coming to hear the music. And this ran for a number of years. So his music really resonates, I think, across a lot of demographic lines, across a lot of genres. And of course, we know his collaborations with Joni Mitchell. And so I think his music will always resonate with every generation.
Totally. And you're seeing a lot of that energy kind of echo right now, reverb right now. There's a
Yeah.
youth movement in jazz unlike any, and I'm a young guy, so I don't have that many years to go by. But I mean, you've got a better vantage point than most, being at City College. It seems like young people are really, really kind of opening their ears to jazz at the current moment. And with people like Kamasi
Yeah.
Washington and Terrace Martin playing rock shows.
Right.
Would you say that's the case? Again, you've been in education for a long time.
Yeah.
Is it kind of surprising you that young crowds that were not necessarily in jazz before are kind of getting hip to it?
Not really, because when you look at the music historically, from basically the swing era, when big bands was the main that was the main music, that was the pop music of the time. So everyone was dancing to big bands.
Yeah.
And then of course later on, as the music evolved and became heard in movies and television. And then, of course, I think where we are now, to me, reflects where we were in the 60s culturally, because in the 60s, we're just talking about black radio. But think about this, in the late 60s, man, you had Monterey happening, and then you had like a lot of cross-fertilization going on. So Miles Davis was playing at the Fillmore on the same bill with the Grateful Dead. And,
that's right.
So you had all of these jazz artists and pop artists congregating in the same places, playing for the same audiences. They were expanding each other's audiences. So I think in large part, this is what's happening right now with artists like Kamasi and Robert Glasper, that they're turning on a whole new generation of listeners to this music. And some people might want to call that like a gateway. That's fine, whatever you want to call it. But hopefully they'll go dig deeper and say, well, these guys are really bringing some new sounds to my ear. Let me go see where this is coming from. Keep digging. So I think it's great.
And pulling in what you said about Mingus, I mean, I think a lot of people can hear that this is a freedom music, that this is a music that takes on, topical things, that is about freedom of expression. So, that's important. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Steve, you were in the middle, as from what I understand, you were in the middle of a project that kind of got interrupted by these COVID lockdowns, but I'd love to hear more about it. This would be the Analog project you were working on?
Yeah, well, I have a band called the Analog Band.
Yep.
And consists of Ray Angry on keyboards, Willie Jones the third on drums, and Corcoran Holt, who's been playing bass with us lately, and Ben Williams was the original bassist on the recording. And as a matter of fact, we had just finished our engagement at the Birdland. We finished a 4-night run the very weekend that they shut everything down. We finished that Saturday night. Monday, everything was shut down. So we kind of got in just under the wire.
Wow.
And of course, now knowing what we know now, didn't know then, we feel very fortunate that none of us got the virus. Yeah. Actually, I just got my test last week, finally, and negative.
All clear.
And
hey, great news.
All clear.
Yeah.
Didn't have any symptoms. Like everyone, I was quarantining and just staying in pretty much. But we had some upcoming engagements, some upcoming work, and it got put aside. So we're going to have to regroup and see where we go. But the project has been together actually for about 3 years now. And the reason we call it the Analog Band is because a few years ago, the producers, Jake Cohn and Steve Mandel, came to me and they had this idea of presenting me with some original tunes, like not jazz tunes, but basically kind of pop tunes, original tunes. And they said, look, we want you to go in the studio. We want to take you in the studio. We want you to do your own arrangements of this music, whatever you want to do with it. No restrictions. And here's kind of the band we have in mind. And we, decided to get on the band. And it said, here's the best part. We're going to go and record for a couple of days, and it's going to be entirely analog, like old school. So we're going to record the 2-inch tape.
Tape?
Tape.
Wow.
Tape. And recording LP only, no digital, anything.
Oh, that's right.
So, yep. So we went to the studio in Midtown, and we did 2 days of recording. And it was like old school, man. We would just workshop the tunes until we got them where we wanted to say, okay, now let's do a take. And we would do maybe 2 or 3 takes, really no overdubbing, a couple of spices here and there. But it was really like doing the old school recording, man. So everything the tape, and it was the
vinyl LP.
Yeah, and mixed and mastered analog also.
Wow.
So it was AAA, no DD anything. So the sound is like, that very warm LP sound that you get. and we've had a lot of fun with it. It's been very successful. So
Can people still buy that first project? Is that
yeah, they can still
yeah?
get it.
Okay.
Yes, JMI Records, and if they look it up, it's called the name of the record is called "Sit Back, Relax, and Unwind," which is the title of one of the. It's actually the title cut, and but you can find it online. And but yeah, you got to have a turntable.
Hey, well,
So
it's making a comeback. It's making a
it is.
comeback.
Yeah,
And I think it's
yeah,
because, just like you said, there is this tactile, sensation that goes along that we've lost a little bit, that went
right,
along with listening to jazz. You'd
right.
have your LP cover, you'd take it out, you'd have to put it on the turntable. You had to stay close by because you had to flip the
That's
thing,
right. Yeah,
And so it
yeah.
made you pay attention. You had the
That's right.
album cover art. And I'm
Yep.
working on a story for our latest issue about album cover art.
Beautiful.
And just realizing how important it is,
It
uh,
is.
because it kind of also it kind of tied in the theme of the album. Back
Absolutely.
the records were originally sold, the 78s, 5 minutes of music, one song. So they
Yep.
started selling photo albums. I mean, all this history.
Right.
Albums that were modeled after photo albums. You'd put your
That's
records
right.
in, and that would
That's
be,
right.
your theme. As you got
Yep.
more music on the disc, obviously you could fit more music onto one disc, but that theme of an album, a cohesive thing,
Hmm.
stuck. And
Yeah.
for a long
Yeah.
time, everything played into that. The liner notes,
That's right.
the album
That's right.
cover art, and we've
That's
lost that
right.
now. And now an album
We
is,
have. Man,
a
I'm
little
I'm
bit.
glad to you're talking about that, because that's what many of us grew up with.
Yeah.
And actually the it's a fold out the analog band is a fold out cover. Album, so you can
Oh,
look
very
inside
cool.
and there's all the
Yeah.
photos of the session and what's going on. And that's what I grew up with, man. You bought those records and you took them home, and as you're listening, you're reading, you're looking.
Yeah.
And so that was part of the magic for me moving to New York, because when I came in '87, of course, I was part of the Young Lion scene, but I was really looking up the musicians that I used to see on the back of all these album covers, so people like Kenny Barron, Marvin
Yeah.
Stam. And I would, so when I got to play with them, I said, man, this is what I've been dreaming about this for years, because I look at their names on the back of the cover, and say, man, I want to play with him. I want to be around this guy. It's beautiful. So that
Yeah.
was part of the deal. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. You mentioned that Young Lion scene. Obviously this was 80s. These are musicians like yourself, like Wynton Marsalis, that were kind of just reinvesting in the tradition of bebop and traditional jazz. My question about the Young Lion scene is, did it feel like you were doing something radical, or was this something that the press was kind of putting on you guys? That
Well, that's interesting, because when I was in my mid-20s at that time.
Yeah.
And of course, I was still listening to everything, but of course, Wynton Marsalis, became a big star, and he became a beacon for many of us, for most of us, including myself, because to see a guy our age that talented and that disciplined and that serious. But also at that time, you had guys like Steve Coleman, who were taking another direction of music. And I was interested in what he was doing also, and so when I moved to New York, there was a tendency to sort of put young musicians in either Wynton's camp or Steve Coleman's camp. And for me, I didn't want to be identified with either camp, because again, I was just open to all of the music.
Right.
I was interested in both of those, but everything in between and beyond. So it was really tricky, because many young musicians were moving here and sort of trying to follow the Wynton models. Well, I'm looking to get a record contract with CBS, Sony, or Blue Note, wear a suit and all of that. Or, hey, I want to be more experimental and do with Steve. But I wasn't really trying to fit in one or the other. I was basically trying to be a musician. I was open to everything.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I could learn from everybody. So it was a pretty interesting time.
Yeah. And, again, I felt unfair, because I imagine a lot of musicians were like you. They didn't even want to be put into as this specific camp or specific channel. They wanted to make music. And I feel like it was industry driven and kind of press driven to carve it up into channels.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate enough to be around guys like Mulgrew Miller.
Yes.
Lewis Nash, Kenny Washington, Peter Washington, because those guys had been here for a minute, and they were playing with, like the Johnny Griffins, the Art Blakeys. So, so I kind of got to get next to these guys and get information as well.
Yeah, learning the old-fashioned way, you know,
Yeah, that's
advanced
right.
on the
Yeah,
bandstand.
yeah,
Um, you know, speaking of learning, you know, you are, as you said, the director of jazz studies at, in my mind, the quintessential New York college, which would be City College, a great
right.
CUNY school. I went to the CUNY Graduate Center. I taught at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. I love CUNY, City University of New York. It must be so challenging now as
Hmm.
we're looking toward an uncertain future,
Yeah,
not just in how to teach, but how
yeah,
to prepare students for what the jazz world is going to look like.
that's
And
right.
nobody has any idea. So what
That's
has
right.
teaching been like for you, or, you know, designing curriculum been like for you over the past few months?
Oh, well, kind of in the midst of
Yeah.
that now, because, and I've been checking in with colleagues around the country, and we're all going through that right now. We're redesigning our curriculums. It looks like that most of us, and I know at City will be online,
Mhm.
mainly because of just, you know, we don't know where we're going to be health wise in September and October.
Right.
So we're gearing all of our classes to be online, with the possibility that we could have some in person if conditions warrant. But we're preparing for everything to be online at this point, including ensembles, because we want to keep the students on schedule to graduate. And so we're going to have to come up with creative ways to keep them engaged, to deal with other aspects of the music. Nothing can replace, you know, the live ensemble playing. There's just no replacement for that, especially in this format. And even when you have, like, you know, the digital interface thing, and you can do sort of real time playing, but nothing can replace that being in the same room at the same time, because you're reacting off each other,
Right.
and it's a communal experience. So we're not even looking to duplicate it, but we'll do the best we can to give the students the best experience, educational experience that we can. We want them to come away with the information that they'll need to go forward. And we know that full well things will take a few years to get normalized again.
Right.
Hopefully within a year or two, people will be able to perform, you know, perform live, but I mean regularly. But you know, we just prepare them as best as we can. So this is a challenging time, and we have to get creative.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And how about you yourself? You know, I know one of my favorite records of yours is the Wilsonian Grain one that was live at the Village Vanguard.
Right.
Did you have watched any of the Vanguard live streams or any of the live streams from the clubs yet?
I have not yet. Been pretty busy with, you know, with the school thing, and also some family stuff. But I'll definitely get around to that. So, and I know the Smalls are streaming
It's
now. So
streaming too. Yeah, it's kind of
yeah,
amazing. You know, you see all the rhythm players with masks on. You know, a lot of
yeah, yeah,
horn players
yeah,
have masks on. They take them off to blow.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's where we are. We're in a new paradigm.
exactly right. You know, this could be the new frontier we're headed into, and
Yeah.
you know, and if that's something we've got to instill in students, you know, I'm sure you're on top of it, because I said you've done amazing things with this program at City College.
Well, thank you. It's been a real privilege and honor to be a part of it. This is my 7th year. I'm going into my 8th year, and of course, the program has a great legacy with, you know, John Lewis and Ron Carter and John Patitucci. And my colleagues are just absolutely amazing. And they're great educators, great musicians, and very caring nurturers. You know, they're great mentors. So, and I'm learning from them and learning from the students too. We have great students. They're really into the music. They're hungry. We have a very international program. They're from Japan, Korea, South America, Europe, all over the States, Canada. So it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah. And starting out, did you ever think that you would wind up in a post like this?
Absolutely not. This is the thing I least expected,
Yeah.
especially coming to New York. I mean, I had been doing some teaching, like most of us, doing a lot of adjunct teaching since the early 90s. So when I was a guest artist at City College about 7-8 years ago, they had asked me about applying for the opening position because John Patitucci was leaving for Berkeley. And I was one of the finalists, and was very blessed and fortunate to get the gig. So I feel very fortunate to have, you know, been there.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Steve, I want to wrap with a little segment we call call and response. This
Uh-huh.
is, you know, musical term a lot of us are familiar with, but these are the quick hit questions. I throw one out at you, you throw an answer back. Is that cool? Okay.
Yeah, sounds
The
fun.
first one, and you already answered this one actually, is the first solo you ever transcribed.
Oh, the very first solo I ever transcribed was Sun Goddess, Don Myrick, Ramsey Lewis, which was produced when there was a big hit in 1974, 75, something like that. But Don Myrick, great saxophonist from Chicago, and he was really great, man. He was a great session player. Of course, was part of the Phoenix Horns that backed up Earth, Wind and Fire and Phil Collins. But he had a lot of jazz language in his playing. But that was the very first solo that I transcribed.
Cool. And I'm transcribing, is obviously for people, maybe people want to get into jazz who aren't at a jazz program. One of the best things you could do to develop your ear.
Yeah, but after that, the first jazz solo, of course, was Take 5 by
Paul Desmond.
Yeah, Paul Desmond.
Okay.
Yeah,
very nice. Cool.
Yeah.
For all the sax nerds out there listening, what's your setup, Steve?
Yeah. Well, I'm on Yamaha saxophones. I have, as a matter of fact, I was just thinking about it before we got online here, and I have 7 Yamaha saxophones. I've been playing their sopranos since 1986 when they introduced the 62. But my main alto is the 82Z, the second generation 82Z with one-piece bell, single-piece bell, which gives it a little more resonance. The mouthpiece is a Van Doren. It's the older generation V16 mouthpiece, which is basically like a fashioned after Meyer. And it's just the number 6 medium and number 2.5 Java Red reeds. My soprano, or I should say sopranos, right, because I play several sopranos. My main sopranos, the Yamaha 62R, which I have 2 of them. But I have, for big band, I play the 82Z Silver straight, because that has a little more point on the sound, a little more focus, and a little more projection, so it works better for big band section. Though in Maria Schneider's band, I play the 62R because there's a little more color, and her orchestrations are a lot more nuanced in terms of colors and textures. Yeah. So that gives me the flexibility in terms of blend that I'd like to get. But I also, for my travel horn, I have an 875 soprano, which of course has a detachable neck, which I can fit in a double case with my alto, which enables me to put it on the plane. So those are my setups.
It's rigged. Nice rig there, man. Very cool.
Yeah,
all right, you've been in New York for a long time. What is the club gone now that you missed the most? It was just a great hang.
Man, wow. Oh my. Well, actually, pre-COVID, the club I think that we all missed the most is Bradley's.
Okay.
And Bradley's, which has been gone since the late 90s. But Bradley's, man, was really the place to be. And I feel very lucky to have become a part of the Bradley's scene for a few years.
Was that where Roy Hargrove would kind of hold court?
Absolutely. Yeah. That was where everybody held court. And of course, it was a great piano room. And then after Bradley passed, Bradley Cunningham, who owned it, and his wife Wendy took it over, she opened it up to, larger groups with quartets with horns and stuff. But that was the room, man, because you could go in, you finish the gig at the Vanguard of Sweet Basil, and you go over there to see Kenny Barron's trio playing, and who would be in the audience but, John Hicks or Ronnie Matthews or Steve Kuhn or whoever, everyone, Betty Carter, everyone was hanging at Bradley's. So you saw the who's who of the music hanging out. And a lot of celebrities would come in also who were big fans.
They rubbing shoulders. No real division.
Yeah. So if you really wanted to get in the New York jazz scene, that's where you went. Whether you were a fan or a musician, you had to go to Bradley's. And you hung there until 4 a.m. And it was just beautiful, man. So we've had no real replacement for that since then. But of course, all the clubs collectively now that have been closed are part of that. And we miss all of the clubs right now. So we're just hoping that they can all get open again and, we can get back to our congregating.
Right on. All right. Well, we'll end with this because you and I were talking about it. Because again, I'm working on an article about it, so it'll be great to have your input. What's an album you could think of in your memories museum that you could just hang on a wall because it was so beautiful? I mean, it helps that the music's good too. But album cover. Wow, I want that on a shirt. I want that on the wall. I want that.
You know what? This is one of my desert island records. Nancy Wilson, Lush Life.
Okay.
Which I think is her best record. The arrangements are done by Oliver Nelson and Billy May and Sid Feller. And the front cover is cover of her, sort of airbrush, and Nancy. She's just so beautiful and captivating in the cover, and she sounds amazing on that record. So I always come back to that one, man. And the orchestrations are just incredible.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Steve, like I said, this has been an absolute pleasure. I love talking to you. And again, I encourage everyone, go out there, start spinning some of these records. Wilsonian Grade live at the Vanguard. Check out that analog project. What was it called again, Steve?
Yep. Sit Back, Relax, and Unwind.
That's man, we could all use that right about now.
Yes, indeed.
But, if people wanted to kind of stay up to date with whatever you've got going on, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, SteveWilsonMusic.com. And hopefully, like all of us, we'll get the dates filled in as the year goes by.
Hope so, man. Well, Steve Wilson, cheers to you. I will see you backstage. I'm going to sign off with everybody watching here. Close down the bar for this last call. But thank you again.
Thank you, Brian, and cheers to you, man.
All right, take care.
All right.
Bye. All right. Well, thank you again to Steve Wilson, phenomenal sax player. Go check out his stuff live at the Village Vanguard. Soulful song. He's the consummate woodwind player, and he's doing great things at City College. Well, that does it for today's episode. Want to thank you again for watching. Wanted to also thank Blue Sound, another one of our sponsors, an award-winning high-res wireless sound system, the kind of sound system that you can play, in different rooms throughout your house. Check out bluesound.com to learn more, or visit Jazziz.com, where you put together a Blue Sound buyer's guide. That'll do it for the last call for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I'm Brian Zimmerman. Thanks for watching. So long.